Rise with me and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, this is the portion of our meeting reserved for public comment. If there's anyone in the room tonight who would like to approach the board publicly, now's the time to do it. Seeing no takers, we'll move on to the next item, which is the consent agenda item. There's only one, the approval of the minutes for August 28th meeting. Do I have a motion?
I'm sorry, it's also the payment of the bills.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks, Karen. I should put my glasses on. And it's two items, the minutes and the payment of the bills. Do I have a motion to approve those two items?
So moved. Second.
Any questions, additions, corrections? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it passes. Mr. Nelson, your report.
Yes, so the high school just completed their homecoming festivities. They had a great week of various events throughout the week with dress-up days. Mr. Mantite spoke at our last meeting about the theme of Pixar movies and so forth. And then on Friday, it culminated on Saturday night with a dance. They had a little over 500 students, which is an increase of about 150 students from last year. So a strong increase of students being involved with the dance, which was great. Friday night, there was the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, which Mr. Notter, Mr. Kaler, Ms. Walls, and Ms. Mail were at, and we had two people inducted into the Hall of Fame, Ms. Barbara Josie, class of 1967, and Mr. Mike Donahue, class of 1980. So their plaques are now on the Wall of Fame in the high school, and great turnout for that. Mr. Manti, Ms. Gergens, and their team did a really nice job of making that look great in there, and good speeches. Mr. Hoffman was one of the nominators and did a great job presenting for Mr. Donahue, but it was really a great opportunity to see people that have been successful both at the high school level and as well as they've left our high school and in our community be recognized in that way. So really a great time. And then there was a football game that the team was successful with. So it was a good week for the high school overall, and so thanks to the high school administration and all their teachers and staff for the extra work last week with extra nights and long nights. Heading into the weekend, you have a Saturday night dance from 8 to 11:30, and with a lot of kids, but it went really well. So kudos to them and all their work with that. And then heading into next week is School Board Appreciation Week, and so we have an appreciation for our school board and all the work that you do. Obviously, we appreciate you every week of the year, but especially on October 2nd through the 6th, we appreciate you. So a chance for our community to remember to maybe write a note to a school board member or members, thanking them for their service and all the time and effort they put into their jobs helping our district be the best that it can be. So on behalf of our administrative team and all of our staff, we purchased Sweet Trio apples for you. We know an apple represents all that is good in education, and so we hope you will enjoy that. And if you do not enjoy Sweet Trio apples, Miss Kane or myself would be happy to take some. We'd even split it. But we do appreciate all the work that you do, and so thank you for that. And then at the high school, we have two national merit, well, we have two different categories of national merit recognitions, and I've asked Mr. Manti to sort of explain what those stand for and give us data on that.
Yeah, so the National Merit Scholarship Competition really takes place through students completing the PSAT or preliminary SAT test, which is in October of their junior year. So the students that you see recognized on here, they're now seniors. They took this assessment junior year, last year in October. And I'm going to talk about the commended students first. So Gordy Thompson and Tyler Walter, they're commended in this competition, which means they finished in the top 50,000 of 1.5 million students who took this test. So super impressive. They received a certificate from the National Merit Scholarship Corporation. They will not be moving on in the competition though. Michael Ancio will be moving on in our competition, and he scored in the top 16,000, so top 16,000 of over the 1.5 million that took the test, and now he's completing his packet to move on in the scholarship competition. So tremendous recognition for all three of these young men, and I will certainly congratulate them. I'll work with the local media to get something out to you as well to recognize them, and just wanted to make sure the board was aware of these outstanding accomplishments for these students.
So congratulations to all three of the students, as Mr. Manti says. And then the next item is the board calendar. So at the request of the board, you've asked for us to sort of lay out sort of a preliminary overview of the board calendar, and some of the pieces that we've had already, and then some that are coming. With us moving to the committee structure, our directors with both Topher and with Diana to say, well, when do you need your committee meetings to be occurring? What could be the topics? So some of those topics may change, but some of them are fixed based on when the finance needs to be occurring. Some of the things that are flexible are when DPI releases certain information. So we were maybe sort of putting our best guess foot forward on some of these pieces. You'll see that there's one issue that we can see that December 25th is when our typical board meeting would be. I put in there potentially maybe that would be the 11th, which is when we'd have a committee meeting, or we would cancel the December meeting. That would be an option for the board to look at. But it sort of gives an idea of the different topics that we have. It'll be a living document as we move forward. We'll keep track of it, and then that'll help us next year as we start the year into the summer to be able to give that to the board and be able to look ahead to what is coming up. I know that's one of the things we've talked about with induction of new members, of like wondering when do we talk about various things, or even as a veteran board member, I know we talk about it, but when is that? Or do we forget to talk about it? We don't want to do that. So we're sort of outlining what that would look like on a monthly basis for that. So any feedback you have on that, feel free to give me feedback on it. This is sort of a starting point for us to at least get it started. If you look at it and you're like, well, I think you forgot about this, then obviously let us know, but we'll keep that as a running record for our own information as well. Okay? And then Joe's going to talk to us a little about the SWSA update.
Okay, I attended the Southeastern Wisconsin Schools Alliance meeting a couple of weeks ago on actually groundbreaking day. For those of you who don't know, this SWSA provides school leaders with objective, nonpartisan information and training. They need to be strong advocates for educational excellence. At this meeting, they had a couple of guest speakers from the Marquette University Law School, and that was Alan Borsk and Charles Franklin. Alan is a senior fellow in law and public policy at Marquette and a longtime journalist, and Charles Franklin is a professor of law and public policy at Marquette as well. And both speakers really talked about their perspectives on the educational challenges and issues facing Wisconsin, and suggested that we just keep telling our stories as educators in our districts. And they also pointed out that the districts need to face the reality that not all students will be college bound, and we should focus on gearing a lot of our subjects to non-college bound students as well. And they had another speaker there by phone, the Assistant Superintendent of the Department of Public Instruction, and they discussed a lot about the budget that Topher already spoke about at the annual meeting. So I think that was it. Do you have anything to add on that?
No, we had an update as well when I was at the State Superintendent's Conference last week, and the same day that was the State of the Union by Dr. Evers, Governor Walker had signed the budget. So there's still the special ed voucher piece, there's still some questions that I think go around that, and we're trying to figure out what that will look like. A lot of superintendents were talking about that, and what that will look like. There's some unknown there, but definitely appreciative of the increase in the per pupil with our budgets for that.
Sure.
Yep.
Thanks.
Other questions for Joe? Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you going and doing that, too.
Sure.
That's a commitment. So we have several committee reports. We'll keep you up there. The Marketing Communications Committee.
Sure. Okay. We met also a few weeks ago. At the meeting, we discussed branding, and the discussion that took place was we were talking about the use of Grafton School District versus School District of Grafton, and it was the consensus of our committee that we would like to use Grafton School District as the preferred wording. And so we just wanted to bring that to the board just to see if you would be in agreement as part of this. just to make things consistent.
So if you, so for example, my memo says School District of Grafton, and when you open it up, it says Grafton School District. Our email in the corner says Grafton School District. Every child, every day, every student, every day. But at the top of it, it says School District of Grafton. Our sign outside says Grafton School District. And so maybe legally it's School District Grafton, but like, I think one of the discussions, and I can't remember if it was Kate or Casey who had brought it up, but when you Google something, you typically want to Google the main topic, not school district. That's going to give you a lot. If you type in Grafton, you're going to come more quickly to what we're looking for. And so, as we're looking at social media, as we're looking at all those pieces, maybe trying to have a common name on all of our documents would be helpful.
So are you looking for a motion from the board? I haven't done this before, have a branding discussion like this. I don't know if that's a problem or if we should think about it and bring it back in a couple of weeks. Does anyone have any thoughts on it? I like the idea. I think it should be more than a nod around the table, though. It seems like if we're going to make that distinction, does anybody want to delay it and think about it for 2 weeks, or can we accept the recommendation? Then I'll look for a motion to accept that recommendation from the Marketing Communications Committee.
I'll make that motion.
Second. Okay. Can't second. You can't. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And it passes. Excellent. That's a great idea.
Okay, and the second thing we'd like to talk about is the Grafton swirl. See the swirl on everything, the G. This is something that we would also like to talk about and see if we could further look at different, what do you call it, logos for this? Is that what we were?
Investigate options?
Yeah.
So you were looking for board approval
Correct.
to start
investigating the options of the different types of G.
Okay. Well, that's a partnership with the village. You know, it was kind of, that's their logo, right? They came up with it, and so some years ago, we, you know, kind of adopted it as well with the notion that it kind of ties us together. So, I mean, there's a little bit of history there that we have to consider if we're going to look for other options. I mean, do we have a village representative on the committee to speak to that, speak to how they might use it? Do you know, Jeff?
Jesse came to our meeting. Really, the focus of the meeting was the name. The name piece was really the branding piece. The logo piece was a secondary piece, is how Joe's describing it, which I think is how it was. So we hadn't invited anyone from the village. Jesse had come when we'd spoken earlier about it, and it was more about, once again, it was branding, but it wasn't about the logo. So we haven't had a discussion at our Marketing Communications Committee. So if we were to do that, we would invite Jesse or a representative from the village to have that discussion, be part of it.
I think it would be a wise idea to get the history of how it was that logo got adopted into the school district, and I think reasonable would be to have that conversation with the folks at the village.
It was a move to tie us together, to create some common ground, to create a little bit of collaboration. So I wouldn't want to, you know, lose that without a lot of discussion and really understand the direction we want to go with it. Is there a reason we just want to, what was the felt need to make a change?
Well, it had to do with, one, not everyone even realized that was a G, and then the blue swish is representative of the village. However, we would still want to be similar, but to therefore identify it as, if you saw it, you would know, oh, that's Grafton School District. If you just saw, if Jeff was doing a presentation and he was just in the corner, you'd be like, oh, that's Grafton School District. It would be with Grafton, rather than you see that and you go, is that the village of Grafton? Is that, you know, something that would make us stand out as the school district, but not, we weren't going to go totally away from it, just maybe a slight variation so that we're not identical.
I think an example was the chamber.
Chamber, yeah.
The chamber was an example that has a little bit of a G off of the swirl. Is sort of the chamber has taken it on in that way. You know, with us updating our naming and so forth, you know, on some of our documents it says quality life naturally. And that has nothing to do with our slogan at all, but it truly shows that we literally took the village's logo and just embedded it. And so, when you look at your email and you hit, you'll see on that, it'll say Grafton School District with the swirl, and it'll say every student every day. So we've sort of played with it a little that way. And I think that was the discussion more so than like going, every district has a discussion at some point about their branding, about their logo. What does that look like? Do people, when they see it, do they recognize that as being with the district, or what do they recognize that as?
Well, in the context that it's not a departure from what we agreed to in the past, but something just to augment our own brand, I think that makes sense, but I think having those guys at the table makes sense. So I think we just need a nod around the table to say, yeah, go ahead and pursue that. It's a good idea.
Sure.
Right?
Yep. It's not on the fast track by any means. Our next meeting is November 2nd.
Right.
So it's not, we talked a little about the website as well, and
Yes.
a lot of those pieces, like what we're currently doing, trying to make that better. This was I think an additional comment that came along in that discussion.
Okay, great.
That's about it, right? Because aside from looking at the website, and Rick did a nice job with updating that, and Kate, I think. So, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Joe.
You're welcome.
So policy committee.
So we had our last meeting on September 11th. We were excited to have Paul join our policy committee. So we had a couple of things on the agenda. First was to review some examples for naming policies. So we're actually going through the process here now. We've tried to look at some of the neighboring districts as far as what do they have for naming policies, as we don't have anything that's necessarily documented. So we could possibly put that in place so that the administration would have some guidelines and thoughts as far as what the board would like with that. So the administration is going to take and do a draft for us so that we can review that at our next meeting. Also on our agenda was we had identified 15 or so policies that are somewhat outdated at this time. So we're looking at taking those 15 policies and basically carving them into a third, and we'll have about 6 or 7 of those reviewed at our next meeting, and we're basically focusing around the student-centered ones first, so the 300s. So that'll be the next set of policies that we look at, so we can at least get those up to date. And then on the board calendar, you'll see that Jeff did one of the things that we will be doing later in the school year in May is we will possibly have Neola and WASB come and make a presentation to figure out who we really want to partner with going forward. So the goal of the policy committee will be by the end of the 2019 school year that we will have all of our policies updated.
Great. Just out of curiosity, is anyone like WASB just giving you some guidance as to which ones are no longer even legal, or is it just you guys digging into it? Because I would think it'd be difficult from a perspective of no one being a lawyer to know which ones are urgent. Is there guidance from WASB on that, or are you guys just digging into that?
I think at this point we identified just the ones that we have, just where we've made some administration changes, just that we're trying to get up to speed. So I don't think we've gotten any official feedback or direction from WASB at this point.
Yeah, no, and we'd have to have someone reading through them. I think some of the policies that have changed with various state standards or various pieces like that, graduation credits, things like that have changed. You have updated those. It just hasn't been on a systemic, let's do all the 100s, let's do all the 200s that goes with it.
I just remember in the past going through this every once in a while. It's a huge job, especially for people who aren't policy writers, and legal eagles and that sort of thing. So whatever, I think if WASB, if there's a service, even if a service with a fee that someone else would overlook it, I'd take advantage of it, because otherwise that's a ton of work.
That's what the May meeting would be, is the WASB Neola presentation, because they would give us sample policies that we could then edit for our community, and then they'd give feedback on, did you change that? And they back up those policies if there was ever to be a challenge.
Okay.
So there's a fee that goes with that.
Right. In the meantime, are we covered for this school year, though? I mean, if there's any that, it seemed like before Julia left, she was concerned that there's some that were like woefully out of date and maybe not even in keeping with state statute anymore. Do you know that we don't have any of those? I might be overthinking it.
Kara, I'm not aware of that. I know Carrie had gone through and documented some of them. I'd seen some, so that's where that list came from. But I'm unaware of that.
And I think it's also important to keep in mind that the policies themselves do not and will not ever get down to the level of compliance with laws and statutes. Those are procedures, administrative procedures. And so policies are overarching set of instructions, but how those policies intertwine with daily activities by administration, we'd never be able to spell that out in our policy.
Okay. Okay.
So our next meeting then will be November 13th.
All right, thanks, Steve. Any questions for Steve? And then curriculum, Carrie.
We met on September 11th. Diana went over the ACT graduate report. She'll be reporting to the full board later in this meeting. We also went over the Talent Development Action Plan, in other words, about RISE, and she went through the goals and priorities for the next few years, and it lays it out even 2018, 19, and 20. And then she discussed math stepping stones in the elementary school math curriculum, that we're now on Stepping Stones 2.0, which is the more up-to-date and including increased resources for teachers. And our next meeting is October 9th.
Okay, any questions for Carrie? Okay, thanks, everyone. Oh, goal planning ad hoc, sorry.
So the ad hoc committee for goal planning of the board, consisting of myself, Steve, and Carrie, met on September 18th. We identified 4 deliverables: a draft of initial board goals for consideration by the full board, draft of initial objectives for each goal, draft of success indicators for each objective, and a framework for periodic review of progress towards the goals, and for endorsement, modification, or revisions of the goals, objectives, and success indicators. So essentially agreed on what we are going to deliver to the full board, and we took a first pass at identifying 5 broad-based goals that will get fleshed out at the next meeting, but I'll read them here. Enhance the academic achievement and personal growth of each Grafton student. Enhance teaching and learning for all through innovative and research-based strategies. Ensure fiscal stability and appropriate resources for programming and facilities. Ensure an environment and culture that promote excellence. And seek the involvement and participation of the entire community in the learning process, as an initial pass on 5 overarching goals for the district. Next meeting is next Monday, October 2nd.
Any questions for Paul? Is your meeting in the new board calendar?
Not everything's on.
As I mentioned, it's a living document. I don't think I did that.
Not everything's in.
Nope.
All right, thank you, committee chair people. Sorry, Jeff.
I only put committee meetings in it that were going to be ongoing, not,
Understood.
whatever. I forgot.
But it is a great point. That framework that we're talking about as an ad hoc group will need to be added to that board calendar, because we believe there'll be times where we'll say, this is when we want to review these goals, endorse these goals, look at success criteria and indicators, but that should get added to that calendar.
And that'll be the beauty of the calendar too, in all honesty. Once you have that added, you'll be able to see what other committee meeting, what are they doing, what is going on, and then how do we fluctuate to say, well, are we reaching towards those goals, when are those reports coming, things like that. It will be helpful.
And like the
We'll
standing,
get it added. What's that?
like the standing committees, it'll be posted so anyone can show up, correct?
Correct. That's correct.
Okay. All right, any other questions for Paul on that? All right, thanks. We'll move on to our personnel report.
So personnel report is just informational. We've hired some special education aides, Billy Norton at Kennedy Elementary, Derek Freund at John Long Middle School, Julia Vanderloop at Grafton High School, and Kim Howell at John Long Middle School. So just informational only for our aides that we've hired. We're fully staffed with teachers. Those have occurred since our last board meeting.
Okay. And your enrollment update?
So enrollment update. So in preparation of heading into the elementary attendance areas update, we have pulled our data together for our, all the way at the bottom, I guess. Oh, wait. I'll come back to that. So we can see that, yeah, right there. So we can see for the 2017-2018 school year that looking at our 4K through 5th grade, we have 935 students at our elementary level. In the middle school, we have 428 students. At the high school, we have 746. So it gets us to about 2109. We're going back. This isn't officially reported until this coming Friday. So there's still some pieces for us to flesh out from. It's based on where students at the school on that third Friday, were they in attendance the day before, the day after, whatever it may be, that would go with that. So you can see the pieces that go with that. We, in the conversation I had with Dr. Ziegler this morning, if you scroll down here, one of the questions that was asked, he was asking me about with this was looking at what is that, what are those different, those different, I can reach it, those different attendance totals. So how is that sort of, longitudinally instead of having to go through and sort of total up yourself? So Kara created the table where it sort of sums it for us. So you can see 2012, 840 at the elementary, 48, 946, 935, 911, 935. So you can see as we added the 4K is when we started to see, you saw that bump at the elementary level going along. We can see our middle school total coming along, and we can see our high school total at that point. An encouraging piece that we see in this year's data is that, and really, what you really need for enrollment to grow, we need at the elementary level to keep the kids that we have and be an attractive district for other students to move into our district. And so we can see that at times, 5K to first grade has not always had a positive correlation of keeping students. We can see 138 to 141, we gained 3, we lost 7, we lost 7, we lost 5. This year we gained 7. So that's a positive data point there to see students that were successful in our kindergarten program and then stayed or added more looking into that first grade. So that's what we want to see is, as you're coming along, more students coming into the program and not choosing to leave our system is what we're looking at internally with that. So we haven't looked at this as an administrative team. This just came out today. But those are good things that we'll be looking at moving forward. So it sort of gives you an idea of over time the enrollment in our district at those different levels. Questions about that before I go into the elementary attendance?
Just one question. There's an exhibit in the annual report that includes early childhood. Significance of any correlation between that and 4K and 5K, or why we don't include them in this chart? Are they in the membership numbers, not in the membership numbers?
They are in the membership numbers. They count as 0.5 of a member. The challenge with EC is that EC includes kids as they turn 3. So the challenge can be all year long. As kids turn 3, then they're allowed to enter our school district as an early childhood student. So it can be a bit of a fluid number.
Okay. All right.
We had that discussion because with EC and speech, there's 19 students that are in that number, and how does that impact us and busing and everything else? So,
but we don't look, just as you did from year to year, we don't look to that as an indicator.
We do not. We have not. We have not.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
We have not.
Okay.
Okay. Yep. So looking at, so if we scroll up, so as a reminder, we have two options that the board is looking at right now. So we have option C. We have option C, which is basically Highway 60 to Cheyenne to Falls Road. So we took option 60, and for some reason someone submitted a thing to Google that Highway 60 turned into Gateway Drive. So if you look on Google Maps, there's a weird piece that has occurred. So that's, I don't know how that is, but I know Rick has submitted something to ask him to get changed back. So option C.
You can't believe everything you see in the
That's true. Just because it's on the internet doesn't mean it's true. Thank you, Mr. Roberts. So we narrowed down to option C and option D. If you go to option D, then basically we took, it was taking Highway 60 all the way across and First Avenue was really the piece that goes with it. So we've talked about this at the May 22nd, the June 22nd, the July 24th, and the August 28th board meetings, and the board decided they wanted to see what does this third Friday count look like when we look at attendance. So if you go up here, quick, please. Thank you. So we have it broken out by map option C, and option D as you go across, and broken out by pre-K, K4, kindergarten, all the way across. It gives you a number to correlate what that looks like within that attendance thing. So not a lot of change, a little bit of change since we looked at it in July from option C and option D. And so you can see that you're looking at just attendance. It's pretty consistent. You're very close, 457 and 456. This is a little more split with 444 and 469. You'd ask for, okay, well, what does that look like with our economic disadvantage? What does that look like as we look at that, as well as our special ed population? So we're looking at our current students. We have it broken down by grade level as well. And so you can see that in option C, looking at our economic disadvantage, you'd see that there's a total of 82 at Kennedy, 64 at Woodview. Out is our open enrollment. I should have said that. So each of those outs that are in each grade level, that's our open enrollment students in that area. So you can see there's 12 there. In option D, looking at economic disadvantage, there's 70 at Kennedy, there's 12 that are still open enrolled, and there's 76 that are at Woodview. If you scroll down.
Jeff, is there a reason that the numbers have changed?
Yeah.
What was sent, I printed this out yesterday and it's different than...
Yes, there is. So,
Okay.
so the reason why the numbers have changed is because we ran through the numbers again today, because this was finalized on Friday. At midnight was when the open enrollment window closed, so we had to figure out how many open enrollment students we had. And as we said, the third Friday count isn't even officially the third Friday count until this coming Friday. So as we went through and looked to see, are these numbers 100% accurate? Rick did some data dive today. Kara did some data dive looking at what we had in our third Friday count as well as what we had previously. So these are the updated numbers that would be accurate. So I think they were off by 5 or 6 that would go with that.
Documents. There's one dated 9/25.
Other question? Good question. I should have said at the beginning, because they are different, but I believe it's updated in the packet.
Yeah,
It's posted,
Yeah,
right.
it's posted, correct.
I accidentally printed them out yesterday. It was a busy day today.
That's okay. No, and it wasn't done early, so we were trying to get the best numbers for the board to be as accurate as possible. So then looking at special ed, so you can see at Kennedy, as you come across, there's 68 in option C, 94 at Woodview in option C, and then in option D, Kennedy has 70, and Woodview has 92. There's 3 open enrolled students that are in our special ed population with that. So if you can scroll us back up. No, I'm sorry.
That one?
Have you seen the commercial? Have you seen the thing where they show a kid and he's trying to turn, he's trying to turn the page? So you've asked us for more data. We have Right Way here as well. Colleen's here to answer any questions about busing. They've looked at the bus routes. We showed that in July. I sent an email to the board earlier, so if you didn't have those bus routes, we didn't include that in the packet, so I did send you an email to have that. It's on page 9 and 10 of that. I think it's our July 24th board meeting packet. It was part of that, so there's bus routes that are attached to that that go with it.
Any questions for Jeff?
So we have shown that, we did the survey with community members. It's been shared with the board. And now we have extra information based on this year's data of our students moving forward. And, historically, it's very close to what last year's numbers look like, so it shows that this is probably a good trend for us looking at our numbers.
So what we have to decide tonight is, do we vote on this, or do we have enough information at this meeting to make the vote? Do we feel like there's any more information that we should get? Should we ruminate over this for a couple weeks and vote later? And I've had some individual discussions with board members tonight, and I'm getting kind of a sense of both. So I just want to get a sense around the table. Do we feel like we have all the information we need to make the decision tonight? Jeff, do you think there's anything else that's coming that we need to see before we can make an educated decision?
We believe the enrollment data is extremely accurate. We struggled with one student, with one number out of all of this, of trying to figure out how we were pulling it and what the difference was, but we had narrowed it down to being really feeling good about the numbers that we're giving you and how they're aligned for enrollment. So short of us, modifying option C or option D, I'm not sure what more data we would be able to provide.
So before I ask for a motion, does anyone have a sense of what they think about whether or not we should go tonight or we should push it off? I think we're that close to voting. We either do it tonight or we do it at the next meeting. If someone feels compelled to get some more information, it's not the end of the world. I know people are asking for it. But we want to do it right. We wanted to get as much information as we can. We wanted to hear from everybody. I think we've done a pretty good job of that. But does anyone want to speak to whether or not we vote tonight or whether or not we push it off?
My thoughts on it were that we didn't, the agenda says an update. It doesn't say that the board is necessarily going to take action. I'm prepared to take action, but I want to make sure that those that wanted to be heard on the matter in person, understood that this was an action item. And I'm comfortable taking action. We've heard through the survey. We've asked, it's been on the agenda multiple times, and people that have wanted to make comment can make comment. But we haven't been specific in saying that this would be the meeting that the board is going to take action. The agenda doesn't speak either way to whether or not we will or we won't. It says update.
What are the minutes? And I'm not trying to disagree with you, Paul. Okay, so the minutes don't state that it would be.
And I mean, the fact that over the last 3 or 4 meetings where this has been on the agenda, we've heard from a handful of people, generally the same people. We've gotten, and we've purposefully solicited information by virtue of the registration.
Yep.
So I guess one question, safety, relative to the routes, which are not defined yet, correct? I mean, there still is some issue every year relative to those routes that would fall under the exemptions for safety. But those will be defined on a case-by-case basis after this decision is made, I'm assuming. Okay. Route length and ride times, I'm just looking at the list that we created in terms of what are the things that we should be considering. Safety, route length, ride times, and number of families disrupted. Route length and ride times, nothing's really changed relative to the July 24th data.
Not really, and the only thing really, Mr. Laurie, that could change is I'm projecting worst-case scenario additional high school, middle school routes, because currently you have 10. I'm projecting worst-case scenario 13, but certainly 10 or less than that could very well be the option. But now that we have more defined, numbers, it's a lot easier to go forward and give you some more concrete.
And in all cases, we're still below that 45-minute target mark.
Yes.
Okay.
And the safety piece, we've started to address that. We met with the sheriff. Topher and I met with the sheriff. We're meeting with Grafton Police as well. So we spoke with him. He's referred us on to the Grafton Police to look at the history of it. As one of the issues at Woodview is as we're adding on that upper parking lot area, the drive coming out of the lot will connect to, and I can't remember the name of the street.
Napier.
What is it?
Mayfair.
Is it Mayfair? Yep, Mayfair will connect to there, and that'll be a discussion for us to figure out, is a crossing guard placed there? You know, will we continue to, with GES, students not crossing the street there, do we need that crossing guard? All those pieces that we currently could utilize a crossing guard in a different way, that would allow us to work with Right Way to say, okay, well, now what areas need busing, which areas don't, which areas are able to be, they're able to walk safely, ride their bikes safely, and so forth. So there's a process that's ongoing with that we're still completing that. Whether you choose option C or option D doesn't really matter, in all honesty, for that. We're still working on getting that accomplished and having as many people able to safely come to school that if parents desire them to do so as possible. You know, and even as we're doing construction at Woodview now, where they're trying to make it safe so as people are leaving that area, because it is sort of a bad spot there, but it's a natural time to look at that.
So it seems like I'm seeing nods that people are okay with making the vote tonight. Is that accurate, or does anyone have hesitation?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a list of things, as Paul was citing, of things I've been weighing on what to take into account with the decision, one also being grandfathering, and we haven't explicitly said that, but I think in looking at the numbers, we kind of have. That we've kind of looked at those numbers and said that's where they exist. So we haven't said it, but I think we informally or said it by saying we're not going to grandfather it. I don't think
Right, those numbers are based on
we
that.
haven't said that,
Right.
but numbers reflect that, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did not run numbers. The board would like, you know, that is not, all we've done is based on where they are in either option C or option D.
Did you have another bullet on your list that you want to present?
Well, no, it was bus route times, you know, looking at that in option C and D, and then I think one other factor is future growth, and we looked at that too, and that's hard to predict. I think if whichever option we go with, I think we have to be upfront and say we're going to probably have to revisit this in 3 years. I don't know what the time is, and I don't know what that driving force will be, but there is development happening in the community that I think could change how things look. And I think we need to be aware of that. And I think at one of the owner meetings, Topher, you mentioned, the question came up, which elementary really could accommodate more students if growth occurred? And I think you had made the comment, Woodview is probably more apt to take on additional schools.
It certainly has more capacity to build expansion onto it.
Well, there's no guarantee that we won't be redrawing the lines, you know, someday, but you'd give it our best shot at guessing where the lines would stay the longest, I think. I think that's been done, but you're right. But it's something that we never did, you know, I've been on the board for 15 years, you know, when we redrew the lines a couple of years ago, it was the first time ever in my time on the board, and that's, I don't know if that's kind of unusual. A lot of times you just have to, especially in a growing district, you're going to change lines as, you know, as the areas develop and you get density in places you didn't expect, but,
Well,
you know.
At our last meeting, we talked about UW-Madison Lab and working with them, so I'm in communication with them to bring a proposal to the board that would allow us to have a 3 or 5 year review that's on an annual basis, or, you know, on that type of a review cycle, that would allow us to be forecasting ahead to see would that help us as well. I was talking to one of the superintendents at the conference, and there's also a different study that goes along with that partners with it, that we would also be able to look at. Also looks at just not just population, but also home building and so forth that would go with it.
Okay, so
And further to Mark's point, so this eliminates all of the grandfathering, and it eliminates all of the shuttles, right?
It doesn't eliminate the shuttles, though, does it?
Except for the private school children, with the public elementary, so those private school shuttles will still exist, but the shuttles between the public schools will be gone.
Yes.
As we're looking at all this data, when we first did, it will eliminate the shuttles for all grade levels except at 4K. There may still be a need for that because, remember, in our budgeting process, looking at the referendum, we chose to only have three rooms for 4K. we currently have 3 rooms for 4K, now 3 teachers. And if we had added a 4th room, that was hundreds of thousands of dollars for an extra classroom that would only be used either in the morning or in the afternoon. And so there will be a process we're going to have to figure out for 4K. Then they would go back to that, their kindergarten through 5th grade school system, but because we just looked at it as a budgeting piece, it was hundreds of thousands of dollars for an extra classroom that we didn't see as being a wise use of taxpayer dollars for that. So that will be a process we're going to figure out. That won't impact anyone currently attending our district, but it will, as we look forward to registration, that'll be something we'll have to develop before registration, so we have a process that allows parents to know where they'll be going for 4K, but they'll know, based on the boundary, where they're going from then on. So that's something we'll have to work with the right way to see who that is there a shuttle, are they on a bus, all those pieces, because they're at different times anyways. That's a unique piece, but other than private school kids, it would eliminate the shuttles.
Okay, so I think that we are prepared to make a decision tonight. We've done our due diligence. I believe we've taken a lot of time to look at this. Before I ask for a motion, though, I guess we can do this a couple ways. We can put a motion on the table and talk about it and vote on it, choosing one or the other, or if somebody wants to speak to an option. We haven't really done that. We haven't had anybody sit out and just talk about the option they'd like to say and why they'd like to vote for that. I can go either way. If nobody wants to throw anything out there, then I'm just going to ask for a motion. Does anyone have anything compelling they want to say about either of the options?
I don't know how compelling it is. I guess I'm leaning towards D because of I feel like the max ride time is probably more important than the average ride time. And I feel like D does a better job with lesser ride times. And the difference in Kennedy is a minute and a half. Either way, it's longer under D than C. But it's 5.5 minutes less for Woodview under D than it is in C. And I guess even the economically disadvantaged, I feel like is more equally spread out under D than it is under C. Special ed, it's only a 2-person difference. So I mean, I feel like all those kind of validate my thoughts on D. I am curious, so Kennedy's going, either way, it's going from 4 to 7 from a bus standpoint. Refresh my memory of what's being done at Kennedy from that standpoint, given how landlocked it is.
So you mean where they're going to be at?
Yeah,
so that's where we're. So that's where at the back side of Kennedy, that's where all the parent traffic will be, and the front will only be for buses. So the buses will line up there, and we're adding where the curb is currently at Kennedy. We're cutting in. Jamie, how far? We're cutting in enough for them to be able to then pull in. I don't know how far we're cutting in.
Get off the road.
Right. They'll be off of 11th, and they'll pull in there for pickup and drop off, and then we'll have parents both dropping off and pick on the back side, as well as then we'll have the tennis courts, the current tennis courts for a parking lot. And currently buses go on the front, but as well as cars do at Kennedy.
I was a little concerned about dividing up neighborhoods, but I guess along First, and that's the only difference is along First Avenue there. But I guess along First Avenue, if you're on one side or the other, you're not really, it's maybe not as much of a neighborhood feel as if it wasn't that big old boulevard road. But that was a concern for me. I like the idea of having 60 go straight across there, and it just feels like that divides the town. But I do like the things that Jerry said about D, but that's the only thought I had about it.
The two concerns I have about D are then you're moving kids currently at Kennedy to Woodview on that First Avenue. Big concern, I'm not sure, but we're moving more kids than I think we maybe initially thought, I'm not sure. And the other is going to the future growth. Based on what I'm seeing, I see more growth and development happening south of 60, which would then put more kids at Kennedy too. But that's maybe a future thing to tackle.
Mm-hmm. And for me, just to be clear, D does disrupt more families than C. Yeah. Almost by, it's not a 2-to-1 margin, but 30% more, right? if my notes are right. Okay.
I guess just, I mean, from my perspective on that, I don't know that, I don't have not sold on one way versus the other, but I feel like I could make an argument that would say more kids being disrupted is probably easier for the kids that are disrupted than less. I mean, if 2 kids move from Kennedy to Woodview, and they're the only 2 kids moving, they're a lot less likely to have somebody to sit next to at lunch the first day than they are if 30 kids move. They're much more likely to have somebody to say, at least I know that kid was in my school last year. I mean, besides the fact that, 349 kids are leaving Grafton Elementary and going to new schools too. I mean, I know we've all thought about that, but, so that I just think could be looked at both ways as well.
And I was leaning towards D. As Mark pointed out, like, he sees more growth in the Kennedy area, and I liked that D actually gives a little more space in the Kennedy area to grow. And,
Based on the current enrollment.
right, based on the current enrollment, but it's always hard to guess where future enrollment could be. I'm with Jerry on I think it'll be great to have a blended school where it's some Woodview, some Kennedy, some GES. I think that'll be a great thing to have the mixture, rather than just a lot of Kennedy, GES, and Woodview, GES. I like the idea of having a blended community.
I'm leaning towards D because I like that the First Avenue, it's a little bit closer to Woodview. On the west side, the people by the lake side, I feel that Kennedy is just much closer, so that'll decrease some of the busing times. And I like how the split is, as far as, I like the north and south split too. So.
This survey has a difference of, I think, 36 to 33 in favor of D, which is probably statistically not significant, but slightly edges out C.
I think there's families that are going to be, no matter what decision is made, it's going to be harder on some families. C is easier for some families, D is easier for some families. I don't think there's any solution that there aren't going to be specific families who would say, wow, that is a lot harder on my family than the other one would have been. But
And if we see a tremendous growth in the district, I was talking to a superintendent last week, who they're looking at their buildings currently and are exploring, maybe having an early childhood center off-site where they're renting a building. So when you have the tremendous growth, there are other options that aren't resulting in millions of dollars of building something that go with that. So there's other districts that have looked at other ways to do that would house people in a different spot of renting and still have a community feel, but be in line with the budget. So I throw that out there. I know that that's something the board will have to address. Hopefully it'll be an issue for us. Hopefully that would be an issue for us, right? But there are other options that it isn't just well, you can only do this. There's options that we can look at that would give us flexibility moving forward. No matter what option you choose.
In going through all of them and reading the survey, you can obviously see the split, and there's advantages and disadvantages with both. I was leaning towards D as well, from the standpoint of the shorter bus rides, a little bit cleaner as far as to explain where the boundary lines are. It's south of 60, it's east of First Avenue. So you can kind of go through and do that. Obviously the hard thing is the disruption to multiple students, and I think you can make the case for it. But I think one of the things that we're charged with as far as making the decision is what's going to be best for long term, and knowing that we're already going from 3 schools to 2 schools, displacing a lot of kids, what's going to be best for years 2, 3, 4, and 5. This might be the framework that's going to be most beneficial for the future.
So we've heard from everybody, so unless anyone has something else they want to add, I'm going to ask for a motion. If somebody wants to recommend an option, we'll get a motion on the table. Doesn't mean we can't talk about it anymore, but we'll at least get one on the table and discuss it.
I'll make a motion in favor of option D for the new boundaries.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
So tell me again, the carve-out in D that takes that segment, Steve, that you just referred to, that is south of 60, that now goes to Woodview, right?
Correct.
In option D.
Yeah.
The significance of that, the practicality of that, and does that lend anything to your decision or your support?
On the it does. More students from the east then do not have to cross because they can go to Kennedy. Students who are already west of the river, more of the students who are west of the river can then go to Woodview. So it would cut down on the number of traffic. As I said,
it's a pretty dense area.
Right.
From a student perspective.
I like the idea that Woodview will be a little more blended with Kennedy, Woodview, and GES students all there. I think for future growth, it just allows a dense area to go up to Woodview, allowing growth in the south to be accommodated easier.
Yeah, well, that's a very good observation, that growth, yeah. Okay.
I think it's a challenge for, I understand it's going to be a challenge for those families to be, but I think if we're going to have to do it, I'd rather, looking long-term, make the tough decision now than have to in a year or two say, okay, we're off and we're going to have to shuttle. If at all possible, not to have to go back to shuttles in only a year or two.
Is that the sign that it needs to be revisited, I guess? Looking forward to is once we start having the shuttle kids from school to school, is that the driving force behind looking at it again?
I would hope, I think we want to be more proactive. I think we should probably review it, no matter what decision the board makes. I would recommend that we review it next year to say, how did it go, what did we learn, what didn't go well. Maybe we survey parents at that time as well to get feedback, that would go with it. But I think having it on some kind of a cycle, I think, working with a population study that would give us a sort of a cycle to be aware that this may be coming and be planning ahead for what that would look like. If unexpectedly 20 families move in that all have kindergartners, that would be different. But if it's a typical spread out at grade levels, then we should be able to proactively think of that.
I'm a little concerned that the Kennedy population is the one that's going to increase faster than Woodview. And I'm just looking down the road, what else would you carve out to go to Woodview then?
I don't know if you start taking further west. It depends where the growth is, honestly, if, the development.
Are you saying Kennedy is likely to grow?
Yes.
Faster based upon the development?
That's my inclination based on what we saw from the town and building.
Right.
So that would be more in favor of D then, since there's more room at Kennedy and D, right? You're starting, if I'm reading this correctly?
Oh, right.
444 versus, it's 13.
Right.
It's how many?
13 on page 2, 457 at Kennedy under C, 444 under D.
But as a comparison to 469, there's a difference of 25 kids in option D, and you also have 10 more kids in 5th grade at Kennedy than you do at Woodview. So you're also giving yourself even more flexibility. That there is a classroom that we aren't using as a classroom at Kennedy that could be used as a classroom that is being allocated in a different way and being used wisely. It's not sitting there empty, but it could be utilized in a different way if there was a need for a classroom. And we could probably do the same thing at Woodview, in all honesty. Right? We have a room that we're using in a different way for servicing. We could probably utilize in a different way if there was a need. So we have some flexibility at both of our buildings. It's not big flexibility, but our enrollment trends aren't showing us that that's what we need right now, which is, I think, why the Facilities Advisory Committee made the recommendation they made.
And Jerry, tell me your theory on disruption.
Well, my overwhelming theory is that as a community we voted for 349 kids to be disrupted. But then on top of that, if there was, without using these numbers, but if there was more kids moving from Kennedy to Woodview, you know, the odds of you having somebody in your class that you knew from Kennedy when you go to Woodview the first day would increase, as opposed to saying we're taking one kindergartner, one first grader, one third grader, you all have a new school. I mean, that's a huge deal. Everyone else knows everybody, and you know nobody. That's a lot different than saying, hey, at least I got this person to sit next to when I get there, at drop off, to go to lunch with, to go to recess with. I mean, yeah.
Okay, any further discussion? Seems to me we are ready to take a vote. So all in favor of option B as the choice for the elementary attendance areas, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's option D. Give every direction. Okay, graduate ACT report.
So I'll turn this over to Diana, Director of Teaching and Learning, and Scott, his high school principal.
Scott to the nice chair.
There's an extra chair over there, Diana.
Oh, these are nice.
This is fine. I don't need comfort.
Okay. Okay, Scott and I are presenting tonight on the Grafton Graduate ACT data. Do we have a...
No.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Nelson?
Click the middle button and those stops. There we go. Very good.
Okay, thank you. The graduate ACT report. All right, so what's included in... Okay, hold on. This is a tricky one. Okay, what's included in this report? So this is the 2017 graduating class. We'll be looking at 5-year trends for average scores on the composite score in each subject area, and an analysis of their readiness level, students' readiness level for college level coursework. It's important to note that these students took the statewide ACT in 2015-16 as juniors, and then the graduate ACT report is that score along with any students who retook the ACT, and it's their latest score, not their highest score, their latest, most recent score. Okay, so if you look at this is the same students, that's called a cohort. So it's their junior score, and then how that score changed as a final ACT. So this is what is this the red is the pointer? Okay, this is what I wanted to point out to the board. So at the curriculum committee meeting, if you remember, we had a score in reading that gave us a little bit of initial concern. We said it wasn't a trend, it seemed to be an anomaly. It was actually a mistake in the data. So in the transfer of the data from WiseDash onto our graph, it was a human error. And so instead of 22.9, it's actually 21.9. So we actually went up in our reading score, which makes a whole lot more sense. We really looked at going further into the data after the last meeting because it just didn't sit right. It just didn't seem like it was the right data. So in looking at all of these, in English, our junior scored 21.5. That same group of students went up 0.3 when certain students chose to retake the ACT. Math, we also went up 0.3. Reading, we went up 0.9. Science, we went up 0.4.
and the composite went up 0.3. So that is the type of trend that you want to see. So when students retake the ACT, you want to see your scores go up.
So I'm just going to add a couple of brief points to this slide. First of all, very proud of our students, those that decided to retake the ACT. Obviously, you can see that results and an overall increase in our not only subject area scores, but our composite scores. Last year, we had a lot of conversation here about some of the preparation opportunities that we were beginning to offer our students, whether it was a 2-day ZAPS workshop or method test prep, providing licensure for each one of our students to be able to prepare for the ACT, or even partnering with Wisconsin Test Prep later in the year last year. I just want to make it clear that everybody understands that those things were really in place for the class of 2018. So if you're thinking like, oh, did some of that have an impact or difference here, we're really looking to see how that would have an impact for next year's class of 2018. So I did want to include that. Certainly that, this is the result of, what had happened in 2016 and then those that decided to retake it in 2017. So I wanted to point that out to everyone.
The board had a question at the curriculum committee asking about trends prior to the statewide testing being required for all students. So this is some data so that you can see, and the main thing I'd like to point out is that in 2013 we had our highest percentage across those 5 years of 77% of our students at that year, before it was mandated, 77% of our students took the ACT and scored a 23.0. So right now we're at 100%, and we are very close to that score when it was only 77%. So that is a good data point to celebrate, that we are getting closer to that score, and that of course our score is slowly going up. So this was in preparation from a question from the board, and you can see that we were hovering around 70%, a little lower in one case, and then we hit this high, and we're close to that score again. Okay, this is something that we talked about at the board, at the curriculum board meeting. And so this was from our own data. This is not part of an ACT report, but we were curious as to how many students did decide to retake the ACT. And we found that about 44%, I believe, of our students, 43%, took the ACT over. And the board asked at the curriculum committee, what's the national percentage? And it's 45. So we are in that sweet spot right with the national percentage of the number of students, or the percent of students that retake on their own by choice the ACT. Last time we did speak a little bit about the 56% of students that did not take it, and we've been thinking about ways to encourage students, but typically students that get a score that they're happy with, that they think will get them into the place that they want to go if they are seeking a college opportunity, may or may not retake. So that can be, Scott and I were talking today, that can be a point of conversation in junior conferences, as well as that counselor connection with seniors when they come back. And then Scott wanted to talk a little bit about the waiver. That was another board question last time.
I would just say, so one other point on that,
Yeah.
we're working with our counseling departments. We feel like we've done a nice job starting to address the preparation component and giving opportunities for our kids. But now we're really shifting as well to looking at our students that after they do receive their scores from the junior administration, really counseling them to, is there an opportunity for you to retake? We think there's a pretty good opportunity if you do that you would improve your score. Even on the new ACT score reports that were in place starting last year, there's on the bottom of the score report, there's a percentage based on their composite of students that retake it again, what their percentage of increasing their score versus it decreasing versus it staying the same. There's a lot of good information on those score reports that we just need to do a better job of going over with our students in those junior conferences and as they lead into their senior year. So we're going to be working on that. So that's one of the things that when you look at data like this, certainly we have some areas that we can look at for managing our students that are retaking the ACT. Diana said there was a question about cost of ACT. We wanted to answer that for you, that $62.50 to take the ACT with the writing test, $46 with taking it without writing. And if there is a waiver available for students if you meet 3 different criteria. If you're 11th or 12th grade student, if you're a U.S. citizen, and if you meet 1 or more of the indicators of economic need, which is available on the form. An example of one of those would be a student with free and reduced lunch, a student that's homeless, those types of things. When you fill out that application or waiver, which would be accessed through our school counseling office, and you know, there's a very good opportunity if you meet those criteria that the test could be paid for. So we wanted to answer that question for the board as well.
All right, as we take a look at our Grafton 2017 graduates as compared to the state, you can see across the board that our students are performing very much highly above the state. We see a nice trend of our score, particularly in science, is a point of pride, because if you remember that science benchmark is the highest benchmark to achieve. So it's just showing that our difference from the state is all positive. And at some point in English, again, English is the lowest benchmark, it's an 18, but still a nice increase from the state.
The next 2 slides just give you the same information, one in more of a visual format, one in a graph format. So if you take a look here, you can see the comparison between percentage of students that are marked as meeting college readiness benchmark, just comparison between Grafton and the state. Take a look across the board, we're far exceeding the state in those areas in terms of students meeting the college readiness benchmark. You know, if you take a look at reading being our lowest area, we're also working on that in terms of our literacy committee at the high school in terms of making that part of our 100-day plan. So just, you know, mentioning that when you take a look at reading being the closest, if you will, to the state average. And then if you go to the next slide, you're just going to see it in a little bit more of a visual format. If you like that a little bit better, you'll see that we are the dark blue in comparison to the state. And then on the bottom of this graph, it just lists the corresponding college level course, the name of the corresponding college level course that determines what benchmark is. So for math example, they're comparing it to a college algebra course. And remember, if you meet benchmark, it means you have a 50% chance of getting a B or better in the corresponding college level course, or 75% chance or better of getting 75% chance of getting a C or better in that course at the college level. Lots of research that goes into this from ACT, and that's why every once in a while those benchmarks will move, you know, from one year to the next as they continue to analyze those courses. So our kids are doing very well here.
So how are we using this information? We shared with the board at the curriculum committee, we have high expectations for all. What have we done? We have identified essential skills and concepts from the standards, and we call them power standards. That is by course at the high school, and they are currently in Canvas, and we're working to make them public for our parent and community members as well. We are working on writing the common formative assessments that are aligned to those standards, so a way to measure those skills and concepts that are most essential tied to those standards per course, to show and identify which students have mastered those standards and which students need additional help with that. Some next steps is embedding opportunities for students to practice college and career readiness skills in all of our classes. We did start that work last year as well and continue to work on that work. So yes, partly it's the preparation that Scott has increased at the high school, which is very good for our students, but further than that, it's really about core instruction. And then increasing student engagement in assessment and goal setting. So our assessment is really our driving initiative this year across the district. We're kicking off a big push to that with our speaker on Friday, who is coming to us from Canada to share his expertise in the area of assessment. Is this me or you? Oh, okay. Rigorous curriculum. So what have we done? We have the disciplinary literacy leadership team that Scott just referenced a little while ago. Elizabeth Minty, who spoke at the curriculum committee, she leads that team. There's representatives from every department. And then they take their learning and their practice back to their colleagues and push the work forward that way. Scott also mentioned the 100-day plans, which we'll be sharing at one of our curriculum committee meetings. We're still doing learning walks where we go through into each other's classrooms to see what practice looks like, have some peer coaching opportunities. We have some summer institutes. All this summer we have high attendance in our teachers. We had institutes from July through August focused on assessment, differentiation, Canvas, and the use of that to engage students. And we had a couple others as well. So that is always our focus on professional development for our teachers. Some next steps, analysis of the correlation between course pathways and ACT results, which maybe you want to talk about a little bit?
Yeah, so if I could speak to this just for a minute. So we're seeing some really interesting information as you look at the courses that students are taking, like for example in the area of science. So you find out that students that take a pathway of biology, chemistry, physics, really perform far better overall in their ACT than an alternative pathway. You're finding out the same thing in math and within the courses that our students are taking within all of our subject areas, the kind of the core areas. And that was really an uncovering at the beginning of the school year for our staff as we were looking at some of this data. So we're just starting to talk about what that means and what that looks like. But that was one of those things that kind of think it's common sense, but once you actually see it and the difference, the impact that it has on an assessment like the ACT, it requires further conversation. So I just wanted to mention that as a next step.
The teacher collaboration around common assessments, we introduced a protocol to follow so that teachers are using a common method of analyzing their data and having those conversations as a team as to what that looks like in the classroom. How does that data inform their next steps in instruction? And then the targeted counseling that Scott mentioned earlier is something that we're also taking a look at. So stay tuned. The comparison of Grafton statewide AC data, the embargo releases on September 27th, so we will have data to be able to bring to the October 9th curriculum committee. That's true for Forward as well. And then we will be able to see some neighboring districts that's still not available to us in WiseDash, but I'm hoping by that time we'll be able to look at our graduate data that you just looked at, but compare ourselves to our neighboring districts and districts with similar size and demographic like you saw last year. So that's to come at the curriculum committee. Do you have any questions for Scott or myself?
I have just that correlation between course pathways and results. I've heard that for years. Math and science are always the ones that are held out as examples because they're the easiest, because of the correlation that you just described within the sciences and math. It's the same thing. What about reading? It's where it seems we're the lowest across all measures. What are those pathways? I'm just curious.
I'll just use one example again if you want. But if I take a communication arts, for example, so we have 3 levels of different courses that we offer at the freshman grade level, sophomore grade level, junior grade level, which would be more of the basic or essentials course, and then kind of an on-grade level course, and then what we call a visions course or an upper level course. So when we start taking a look at 3 different levels of courses, it just brings up a question. Are the students in our essentials course, gaining the same type of exposure to material, to reading, that would be in our on-level course? So those are questions that we have to explore, that we have to look at. But that's a very real example. When you take a look at that, that's in a couple of other different areas as well. You take a look at some of our students that if they start in algebra as a freshman and then they go on to geometry as a sophomore and advanced algebra as a junior, they put themselves in a pretty good position to take a test like the ACT. But if you come in and you're not taking algebra at the freshman year, what does that look like? When you get to be a junior and you haven't taken those courses that maybe adequately prepare you for something like that. So that's where we're at. So we're looking at kind of where students start when they come in, and then starting to have conversations about levels of courses that we offer, exposure to on grade level material. Maybe that's more of the point, is looking at on grade level material versus the leveling, but those are all questions that we have right now.
I guess the only thing that I just suggest or offer is the fact that it seems to me to be easier in the science and the math.
Sure.
Reading is the one that we're behind the most. I mean, we're not behind, we're achieving well and at great levels, but relative to all of the areas. So it seems to me that would be one of the first. And I know at the curriculum committee meeting, we talked about punctuation and sentence structure and increasing the ability to analyze text.
Yeah.
So I don't know, the three examples that you gave, do they equally cover those elements?
Right, that's a great question. And I think along with that goes the fact that we are really emphasizing on, the disciplinary literacy piece, which is we're asking all of our disciplines, regardless of what it is, whether it's in the area of communication arts or math or technical education, what type of literacy work are you doing in your area? Because we recognize it may be different in each of those areas, and as it should be, but is work being done in those areas? And the more that our students can be touched by literacy with the reading and the writing within those specific disciplines, we believe it will help improve their achievement overall as well. So.
All right.
Yeah, what I was going to add is just to that point, social studies, for example, there's a lot of reading that happens in social studies. So what does that look like? It might not be as related to course pathways as it is around what engagement in the task of reading is happening in those courses. So reading is a little bit messier from the perspective of it happens in every course. It needs to happen and should happen in every course. And
Well, I thought I saw on that slide that showed the benchmark for college social science was under the reading
correct
graphs, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Any other questions? We're good? Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, overnight trip request, Jeff.
Yes, so we'd ask the board to approve the Washington DC and Gettysburg John Long Middle School trip. This is well in advance so that they can begin fundraising and so forth. So you'll notice that Ms. Stanislawski, and there'll be other adults going along. We recognize that there will need to be a male chaperone as well. But it is, she's attached to the itinerary. This is something that has occurred in the past. I'm not sure how many years this has occurred.
I don't have she's been doing it, she's been 10 trips, but they've gone on every other
year.
Now, so
it's every other year. Great opportunity for kids, and so we are asking the board, you can see the tour price quote that's been quoted there. The fundraisers there, they'll be working with families to be able to be fundraising and so forth on this trip for students, for 7th and 8th graders. Summer of 2019.
Motion to approve that recommendation?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. A gift report.
Yes, so we would ask the board to approve the gift from Frank Ottlinger, Controlled Dynamics. He's been working with Mike Dodge, and he's he's donating framing materials for our welding tables, and the value estimated at $3,492, as well as from an anonymous donor, also working with Mr. Dodge, but in the wrestling area, the wrestling mindset training course. So it includes for the entire team, value of $1,000. That both are restricted, one for the Tech Ed area and one for the wrestling team.
So is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve the donations.
Second.
Questions for Jeff? All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes as well, with our great thanks, as always.
And we will be sending a thank you letter to both Mr. Ottlinger as well as the anonymous donor from our side, thanking them for their support of our district and our students.
Okay, then we have a construction update, Jeff.
Yes, so we have, we've started our weekly site meetings at all 3 of our sites. So Kennedy's occur on Monday at 10 o'clock in the morning. Wood views occur on Tuesday, and the high schools occur on Thursday. So we've had a site meeting at each of them. What we thought we would do is we would each month bring pictures that have occurred, so to sort of keep just a visual of maybe what's occurred. Maybe sometimes it'll be a video, maybe sometimes it'll be multiple pictures. And we started with just a couple to sort of give you an idea of what's going on. So starting at Kennedy, you can see some of the work that's occurred to the south west of the building, ripping up some of the blacktop that's there and near the field area, and then moving forward. A different site. So this is looking at 11th. Is it looking at 11th? 11th, right? Correct. Right, 11th. So you can see 11th up there. So the work that's been done there. So we met with them today. They're talking about they're still needing to get the ground level at that point. But you can see there's been a ton of dirt moved. I think that final picture will show you the amount of dirt that's been moved out of that area. They're deconstructing the playground right now. We'll be moving that to the side. And then putting that back up again once this is completed. But if you drive over there now, it sort of looks like it's just like the only thing left standing. So that's coming down right now. He was working on that today with that, so you can see the dirt that's going over there. And then at Woodview, you can also see the dirt that's been taken out right off of this is looking out in the cafeteria basically. And you can see the amount of dirt that's been moved as they're getting ready to put in the gym. So that is also the area that has to have a ton of dirt moved. Hoffman and the excavators are working with Rattler to be able to move some of that dirt over to the high schools because we know that we need more fill over here in various areas. So being very efficient with reutilizing things to save costs, whether it's at the baseball field or as well in the gym area and additions that are occurring at the high school. And so you can see some of the other pieces that's where it slopes up to the street. And that'll become lower, and then it will have a gradual grade up to the parking lot that will be up there where the current sign is now, and the other way. And so at the high school, you can see right off of the backside of the auxiliary gym, the dirt that's been moved up towards the football field. You can see that is an enormous amount of dirt has been moved towards that. They're starting to level that out, and the next picture shows just that area being torn up that goes with that. So we're starting to see some progress at all of our sites, and they're looking at rebar going in. I think at Woodview, it was dropped off today.
Yes.
Right?
So I think footings, rebar should go in this week, end of this week, and I believe Kennedy will be next week.
I think 2 weeks from now is Kennedy, and the high school is, I think, next week is what they were looking at, yep. So we have that going on. Jamie has a couple updates with our bid packages.
So yeah, a couple updates. October 11th, at the owners meeting, we will be going over the bid package 2. And also October 5th, we will be going over the tennis courts that are going to be located at Delmar Middle School and the soccer field renovation.
So it's exciting to see dirt being moved, and it'll be more exciting when we start seeing masons out there and constructing and seeing it start going vertical. But we're pleased to do that, so we thought we'd every month just bring some pictures or a short video for to be able to just see an overview of what's happened at each site.
Then Jeff, some of the dirt that's at Woodview and Kennedy, is that coming up to the high school?
It is, yep. Just some of that will come to the high school. He was saying today that a lot of the dirt at Kennedy, they're moving a ton of it, but they're going to need it to level out at the back side of Kennedy for that gym area. They're going to need that.
Kennedy's a neutral site,
okay.
So we will...
Which I was shocked, because that side hill is just like getting cut, and it's just, all of it's being moved, but there's just such a big slope that they're needing all of that. Yeah, but so the Woodview dirt is being brought over, that's being used there.
My wife informs me that the constant parade of trucks and heavy equipment tractors at GES is a big hit for the students.
I saw something on Twitter on Friday from district office that showed little kids lining up against the fence watching the truck being rolled off. And I know I was over at Woodview the other day, and one of the teachers had said that when the truck first started moving dirt, kids started clapping, and the truck, he got off and did a bow. So I think the workers are having as much fun seeing the kids. It's just their job, and they're like, I'm just moving dirt, and these kids are like, wow. So yeah, I think it definitely will be a year to remember for kids seeing things that you used to play with, that you get to play with, but now it's actually moving really big pieces of dirt. So it's pretty cool to see.
Great. All right, any questions about the update? Okay, now we'll look for a motion to convene in closed session to consider performance-related data of an administrator over which the board has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. This is in accordance with Wisconsin State Statute 19851C. Do I have that motion?
So moved.
You just say yes out loud.
Yes.
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 Yes.